Welcome back to 2 Cents We See Scary Movies, the podcast where we dive into horror films one deranged step-parent at a time. Each month we pick a theme and every movie we review fits that theme, sometimes perfectly and sometimes, well, we just try not to get murdered in the process. I'm Talon, the one who's pretty sure that if your new stepdad spends more time picking out the perfect murder knife than actually getting to know you, it might be time to reconsider family game night. And my co-host is Dan, who firmly believes that if your dad starts rearranging the crime scene like he's hosting a Martha Stewart bloodbath special, it's probably best to skip the next family barbecue, unless you're bringing backup. This week we're tackling The Stepfather, a movie that proves sometimes the real American dream is just one perfectly placed birdhouse away from a full-blown family massacre. Let's get into it. So this movie stars Terry O'Quinn as Jerry Blake / Henry Morrison. And I remember watching this movie as a kid, and he was a big deal because of this movie for me when I was a kid. And I feel like I probably saw him in other things, but of course I didn't really see him again until Lost. And when I watched him in Lost, it took me a good little bit before I got over his stepfather role and trying to see him differently because that's how I'd always known him to be.
Right.
Jill Sholin as Stephanie Main, Shelley Hack as Susan Main, Charles Lanier as Dr. Bondurant, Stephen Shellen as Jim Ogilvy. Those are the main characters. I did get a few little behind the scenes tidbits. There were a bunch for this movie. I just picked a few of them. So this movie was actually inspired by a real life crime. The Stepfather was loosely inspired by the chilling true story of John List, a man who murdered his entire family in 1971 and assumed a new identity. He wasn't captured until 1989 after being featured on America's Most Wanted. I thought that was interesting.
Wow.
The movie almost had a different tone. Originally, they had intended it to be a dark comedy, which I would be interested in seeing.
Oh, me too. I love dark comedy.
However, the filmmakers decided to lean more into the horror thriller aspect because they felt it had better suited the storyline and heightened the tension. It was a low budget success. It was made on a budget of just over $1 million. The film became a cult classic. Its success was largely due to the unsettling atmosphere and O'Quinn's chilling performance rather than special effects or high production value. The movie opens with a shot of a nice, tranquil neighborhood. There's a kid on a bicycle and he's delivering papers. It's very kind of old. It's very old-fashioned-y, like not old-fashioned-y, but I mean, who sees kids delivering newspapers on bikes anymore? But it's your typical everyday family neighborhood. The camera focuses on a house and moves inside the bathroom where there's a man standing in front of a mirror with a small suitcase. He's covered in blood. It's all over him, everywhere. And he's staring at his reflection, looking kind of angry, mumbling to himself. He's got this semi-shaggy hair, scruffy beard, mustache, glasses. He opens the suitcase, takes a few items out, hangs them on the back of the door. Then he starts stripping off his clothes, tossing his glasses, shoes, and other belongings into the suitcase. Afterwards, he takes a shower, rinsing off all the blood. I was surprised that you could see everything.
Yeah, the dong. Yeah, no,
yeah.
I don't ever recall seeing anything like in the 80s like that.
No, not at all.
That was always the no parts.
Absolutely. I mean, I could, but yes, even though I don't recall seeing men naked that much in 80s movies. Women, yes, all the time.
Yeah, every time, every movie.
Right, but men not so much. But to see him, because of course, when you're looking at it, you see him from behind, but in the mirror, you can see the front. So I was like, oh, well, I don't remember that when I was a kid, but that part surprised me because that was new to me. He takes a shower, rinsing off all the blood. When he gets out, he completely changes his appearance. He shaves his beard and mustache, trims his hair, and goes from looking like a scruffy 1960s beatnik to a well-groomed, middle-aged businessman from the 80s. He puts in contacts, he puts on a dress shirt with a tie, a sweater vest, and a jacket, looking completely transformed. As he's leaving, there's a shot of family photos in the hallway. Everything looks all nice and quaint. Pictures of him, his wife, their kids, specifically a young daughter. He even stops on his way out of the bathroom. He looks down the hallway and sees a toy boat. He stops to pick that up and put that in a toy box in one of the kids' rooms before heading down the stairs.
Yes, because you want a clean house.
Absolutely. Certain things are very important. As you'll notice, some things just aren't. As he walks down the stairs, you start to notice the disarray. Because as he's going down the staircase, you see some of the pictures are tilted and blood smears, a big bloody handprint, blood everywhere. Then once he gets to the bottom of the stairs, it's just a complete bloodbath. Blood is all over the place. The living room is a crazy disaster. His wife is lying dead on the floor. I think there was a daughter that was sprawled like halfway on the floor, half on the couch. It looked like it, but the room was such a mess. Tables were flipped over, chairs were turned over. He even stops to pick up a fallen chair and set it back in place, like he's straightening up the room.
Yeah, well, you
Because,
want family time to be organized.
right, no one's going to notice the dead family members, but that damn chair and the boat, yeah, they're going to,
Right.
whoa, what a mess they are. They are so not
Yep.
tidy. So yeah, he picks that up as if he's straightening up the room, but he's almost completely ignoring the gruesomeness of the scene around him. He's eerily calm. He's in a weird way, like he's happy almost. It's odd. And then as he's walking out the door, you see another younger daughter on the floor, but he just casually walks out of the house with his suitcase like nothing happened. He strolls down the walkway, grabs a newspaper from the front yard, walks down the sidewalk, and he's whistling Camptown Races as he goes. The next scene shows him on a ferry, and I guess ferries must have been pretty popular in the 80s, and I didn't realize it because this is now the second movie we've reviewed that has a ferry in it.
Yes.
They were a big deal, I guess. Anyway, he's standing at the very end of the ferry with his little suitcase balanced on the edge, and once they get far enough out, he casually knocks it off and watches it float away and sink. Then we jump ahead a year. A girl is riding her 10-speed bicycle through a neighborhood until she reaches her house. She pulls up around the back, goes to head inside, and suddenly you see a bunch of leaves thrown at her. It's her mom, who is raking a shit ton of leaves. Like there's a shit ton of them there.
More leaves than the trees had.
Yes. Definitely more leaves than trees. I was like, wow, that's a lot of leaves. So her mom is playing around and throwing these leaves. They end up having this little leaf battle. I guess the mom was raking them, but they had like the bushel baskets, like you would see apples in. They remind me of things that you have apples. And those were filled with leaves. I don't know what she was going to do with them. Like they didn't have, when we were doing leaves, because we did leaves all the time as kids, we always had the bags that we'd throw them in. We never had bushel baskets full of leaves.
Maybe she wants to bake a pie. You never know.
Leaf pie.
Times were tough even back then.
So they're goofing off and just throwing them leaves each other. They're on the ground and they decide to call a truce. They get up. The car horn honks. The mom's like, Jerry's home. Come on, hon, let's go see Jerry. She's not very thrilled about it. The daughter isn't very thrilled about Jerry. You can tell by the look on her face. She dumps a bushel of leaves on her head. You can tell she's just not into it.
She's not a fan of Jerry.
No, not at all. Jerry asks the mom if Stephanie's home, and she says yes, she's in the backyard. He tells her he has a surprise for her, something no family should be without. Jerry and the mom head to the backyard, and Jerry reveals the surprise. It's a dog. This is his attempt to get on Stephanie's good side, since she's clearly not a fan of his. He's hoping the puppy will help win her over. She's definitely happy about the puppy, but still not happy about Jerry. At one point, Jerry touches her arm and says, "That's my girl," but she flinches and pulls away, clearly uncomfortable. She gets up and tells her mom she's going out inside to call her friend and tell her about the new puppy. The mom reminds her to say thank you. So Stephanie turns around and says, "Oh, thanks, Jerry," in a very unenthusiastic, almost sarcastic way.
Yeah, and the touch, she was actually like in a happy mood at that point. I mean, she was a little uncomfortable, but she was happy. But then that touch, it just completely changed her perspective.
Yeah, her whole demeanor changed completely. So after she goes inside, Jerry tells mom he's worried that Stephanie might think he's trying to buy her love and wonders if he shouldn't have gotten the dog. Mom reassures him saying, "Oh, it's perfect. You're perfect. Just give it time." And he's like, yeah, it needs time. The next scene shows Stephanie pacing back and forth in her psychiatrist's office. She seems to have a really good relationship with him. And this is where we learn that her dad died a year ago. The mom did quite the turnaround real fast.
She moved on real quick.
Yeah.
That's another theme we seem to cover is how quickly people get over death.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
You know, 1 minute it's like, oh, it's so terrible. And then like 2 seconds later, it's, oh, everything's fine. We're done. We've moved on.
Right. Let's go swimming or just anything. Let's play some soccer. Yeah. I was like, what? Did she wait like a week? I don't know. It had to have been incredible because her dad died a year ago. Plus he killed his family a year ago, but they've been married for some reason. And maybe I just thought this myself, but I felt like they've been married for a while, like at least a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a quick turnaround, really quick. She's angry about his death and resents it because she realizes that if he hadn't died, she wouldn't have a stepfather. Her anger over dad's death has also been causing trouble at school, and she's still struggling to accept what happened. Her therapist has been very helpful with her, and he's very understanding, and they kind of have a very jokey relationship. She's constantly looking out the window because Jerry's out there in the parking lot waiting for her in the car. And when the session ends, she goes out there, gets in the car, and he asks her how her visit went. She said fine, and then immediately turns the radio up really high to obviously avoid talking. But Jerry keeps going, saying they've been butting heads lately and really need to work on getting along. He also mentions that he and her mom would like her to do better in school this year and not get into so much trouble because she's been she's been suspended a few times and they need her to chill out. Immediately after that scene, they go to her fighting some girl in her art class. Like they're brawling all over the place, rolling around, pulling hair, pulling clothes. The art teacher breaks it up and takes her to the principal's office. And it cuts to a scene where we see what Jerry does for a living. So he's a real estate agent and he's showing a house to a couple and their daughter in a really nice neighborhood. I think it's his neighborhood. While the parents look around inside, Jerry's out back pushing the little girl on a swing. He's making small talk, telling her that he has a daughter a few years older named Stephanie, who goes to Oak Ridge High. He asks the little girl what grade she's in, and when she says the third grade, he says, "Oh, I remember when Jill was in the third grade." The little girl, smart little girl, catches the mistake and asks, "Who's Jill?" Jerry quickly replies, "My daughter." And she said, "I thought your daughter's name was Stephanie." And then he's like, "Oh, yeah." And then he adds that she is a straight A student. She's on the student council, and he's very proud of her. Then, of course, we go to Stephanie, and she's coming out of Oak Ridge High and telling her friend that she's been expelled. So he's living quite the fantasy life. The friend asks what she's going to do now, and Stephanie says she's hoping to go to boarding school. The friend then asks what her stepdad's going to do when he finds out, and Stephanie replies, "He's going to kill me." Foreshadowing. So then they're all sitting down for dinner, the mom, dad, and stepdad, and Stephanie, and they find out she's been expelled. Jerry's reaction actually wasn't as crazy or wild or harsh to the expulsion as you would think it would be. He just says girls don't get expelled. The mom, on the other hand, also is calm about it.
Yes, they had no reaction to it.
Like, no, not really.
They didn't seem pissed or anything. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it was. My parents would have been so freaking irate. But the mom ends up saying, "Okay, well, this is where we are now. So what are we going to do moving forward?" Again, both unusually calm about the whole thing. Stephanie says she wants to go to boarding school. Jerry seems far more bothered by this than the fact that she's been expelled. You can see it on his face. He's just like, "I don't like that." And he says it's just not a family without children. The mom hesitates, unsure of what to think, and asks Jerry for his opinion. He responds with, "I don't think we need to break up the family. Father knows best."
He's a strong family man.
Yeah, very much so. So at this point, and actually I'm surprised that he didn't just want to homeschool her. And just have her there all the time.
Well, homeschool really wasn't a thing at that point.
Yeah, probably not unless you were like really, really religious or something like that, I suppose. But at this point, it looks like boarding school is off the table, but she's still hopeful. After dinner, Jerry heads down to the basement to his workshop and starts working on a project, which turns out to be a birdhouse. We find out a little later on. Meanwhile, Stephanie is on the phone with her friend, venting about dinner. She says Jerry acts like he's straight out of a TV family, like he thinks he's Ward Cleaver. But then her mom knocks on the door, so she hangs up. Stephanie and her mom have a heart-to-heart about boarding school and whether she really wants to leave. Stephanie says yes, insisting it just doesn't feel right with Jerry around. It doesn't feel like their house anymore. It feels like it's Jerry's house. The mom opens up about how much she loved Stephanie's father for like 2 minutes, and how after he died, she thought she'd never love anyone again. I guess she only thought about that for like a day.
A week. A week.
Right. I don't think I'm ever love anybody again. She blinks her eyes. So then she met Jerry and she says he really wants to take care of them. She asks Stephanie to try to make it work. Stephanie admits she's trying really hard, but there's just something about Jerry that bothers her and she can't quite put her finger on it. By this point, Jerry has finished working on his birdhouse and comes upstairs, standing right outside the door. He overhears Stephanie saying that there's something up about him, and she just doesn't know what it is, but it's something. That's when Jerry walks into the room, interrupting the conversation. He casually asks if they're still bothered about the school situation and reassures them that things will be clearer in the morning. he acts like everything's just fine. The parents go to bed. And it's pretty much, of course, you have to have the sex scene in every 80s movie.
Of course.
So the mom and the dad are having sex. He does not look into it at all. He's just kind of just staring blankly because, she's on top of him seated and he's holding her up. His body's against hers and his head's on her shoulder. And he just looks
oh,
like
baby, oh, baby.
Right. He's not even doing that much.
He's calling it in.
But yeah, they're loud enough that Stephanie can hear them from her room. So she puts on headphones to drown it out. The only significant part of this scene really was when, before the sex scene, he's watching Mr. Ed, for anybody out there who doesn't know what Mr. Ed is, it's an old TV show about a talking horse. And he's laughing and enjoying this show and states that it reminds him of his childhood and he loved the show and he didn't realize horses couldn't talk until he was in high school. The mom, Susan is her name, by the way, which I did not realize until I looked up the cast after I'd done all this because I did not catch her name at all. I just kept calling her the mom. So Susan says that she wishes she saw pictures of him as a child and knew anything about his past because he never talks about his past at all. But Jerry just kind of brushes it off, saying the past is just a dream. All that matters is that here and now and being with you. He's so romantic.
He is.
Yeah. In the next scene, we cut back to the old house from the beginning of the movie, the one where Jerry slaughtered his previous family. The house looks run down and boarded up. Outside, there's a car parked, and we see two men in it. There's a relatively younger guy and a slightly older man. The older man turns out to be a journalist who covered the case when it happened. The younger man tells him he thinks the case should be reopened to find Henry, the guy who killed his family, because the police aren't doing anything about it. He explains that 3 weeks before the murders, Henry quit his job, but still left the house every day at the same time and came back home every day at the same time every night. The guy points out that there's only so far you can go and still get back home at the same time every day. He pulls out a map of the Seattle area and shows the journalist a circle marked radius where Henry could have traveled while still keeping that routine. He believes Henry was out setting up his new life before killing his family, and he asked the journalist to run a story with Henry's picture, hoping that someone in the area will recognize him now that he's starting a new life. The journalist asks why he's so invested when nobody else seems to care, and nobody else seems to care.
Yeah, nobody. Not a single person.
No one cares that this family was completely annihilated in the most gruesome manner possible. It looked like no one gave a fuck. It comes up many times. It's like, what? What are you talking about? It was only a year ago. But yeah, no one cared. So he asks him why he's so invested in this brutal murder of this family. And that's when we find out this young man is the brother of Jerry's former wife, the one that was killed. The journalist feels bad for him and agrees to do what he can to help. So in the next scene, we see Jerry, Susan, and a group of friends having a barbecue in the backyard. Jerry gets up and gives this overly kind of sappy speech about how the people there are the first five families he sold houses to when he started working for American Realty. He's clearly very proud of his connections he's made, and he goes on and on about how grateful he is. And it's obvious he's become good friends with these people, and they really seem to like him. I don't know if I were a realtor, I'd want to sell all the houses around me to people. Like, I just feel like at some point, if something weird or went wrong, or, fear thy neighbor-ish.
Right.
But you got that connection there. I don't know. I think it would be uncomfortable and awkward at some point. But
I mean, it would be kind of like having a therapist living next door.
Yeah.
It would be it'll be odd. I mean, granted, it's a different scenario, but still, it would just be odd.
I feel like people would come over to you all the time. So this is going on with my house. Well,
right.
I'm not a plumber. I'm not an electrician. I'm not this.
I just sold it to you.
But I feel like people would constantly be coming over and, trying to tell you what's wrong with their house. So he also has Susan and Stephanie come up to take a picture with him. As soon as the picture's taken, Stephanie is all cringy and ducks out and gets away, goes back over to her friend. The mom looks a little bothered by it. Jerry tries to act like he's not bothered by it, but he just goes on and gushes about how much he loves his life and the family and all the people. After Jerry's speech, the scene cuts to a group of guys sitting around a table looking at a newspaper. They're reacting to the article about the family massacre that happened a year ago. They're talking about how it's just sensationalism, and they're questioning why the paper is bringing it up again after all this time.
Yeah, they're annoyed about like the fact that they're trying to solve a murder.
Right. I was
Oh,
like,
they just made it up.
what's wrong with these people? Because they were like really like they were perturbed by it. Like,
Right. It's like, oh, they're just trying to sell papers. Yeah, well, that's kind of like what they're supposed to be doing, but
right.
you
And
know,
why would you not want anyone to solve this? It's almost like they
right.
were like, oh, we don't have time for this.
Yeah,
Okay.
it happened a year ago. Why do we care about it now?
Yeah, right. So they're all strangely dismissive of it, even though the entire family was brutally murdered and no one seems to care. One of the guys shows the article to Jerry and he acts like he doesn't know anything about it, but he's very bothered by it. And one of them wonders aloud, what could make a man do that to his entire family? And Jerry responds with, maybe they disappointed him. No one thought that was odd.
Yeah, that would be a little odd to me.
Yeah. Then he just casually makes a hat out of the newspaper and puts it on the kid's head. The mom calls to Stephanie and asks her to go to get ice cream from the basement freezer. Stephanie heads inside, and while she's getting the ice cream, Jerry, not knowing she's there, comes storming down the stairs. He's furious, yelling about how all they need is some order around here. He starts banging his hands on the table and muttering things like, you're a good boy, you're daddy's little angel, why can't you just leave me alone? Then he starts talking to himself in the mirror, pointing at his reflection and saying, you're going to keep this family together. Stephanie slowly is moving closer to him, clearly trying to figure out what the hell's going on with this dude. Suddenly, Jerry notices her, and his whole demeanor changed instantly. He went from crazy lunatic to cheerful stepdad. Hi, honey.
Everything's great.
Right, like nothing happened. He quickly comes up with an explanation saying that being a salesman means constantly putting on a happy face, and sometimes he just needs let off steam. The next scene shows the party winding down. Stephanie is outside, wandering through the backyard, which still has remnants of the party setup. She notices a newspaper lying on the ground on the chair, picks it up, and sees the article about the family that was murdered by the father a year ago. So then Stephanie is in her, and this is the next day. Stephanie is in her room writing a letter to the Seattle Examiner. She's requesting a picture of Henry Morrison because she's starting to think that Jerry might actually be Henry. Us as viewers, we know she's right, but at this point, she's just following her instincts. Yeah. Her friend comes in and tries to make sense of it, saying, so this guy kills his whole family, and you don't like Jerry, so you think Jerry is this guy. Which is pretty good logic. Stephanie explains that it might not be him, but she did some digging and found out that Jerry showed up in town right after the murders. She just wants to see a picture to know for sure. Then we cut to the city where we see this journalist from earlier walking down some steps. Ogilvy, the brother of Jerry's previous wife, rushes up to him, pissed off because the newspaper did not include a picture. He says, I don't know how you expect anyone to recognize him if you don't run the picture. The journalist explains that it was a struggle to just get the article published. His editor was the one who decided not to include the photo. Ogilvy apologizes and promises it won't happen again. The journalist, still a little shaken, says, you better not, because I almost had a coronary. Then he pulls out his cigarettes, lights up and offers one to Ogilvy. I'm like, you're worried about a coronary, dude? Okay.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, that's true to life. That right. A lot of people do that shit.
I wonder if they kept. Well, this one, I don't know if this would be dark humor. I wonder if they just try to keep in a little bit of that humor that they were originally going to have in the dark humor one.
It's possible.
Yeah. Next, we see Stephanie back in a session with her psychiatrist, discussing her desire to go to boarding school. She thinks she might be able to convince her mom, but she doubts Jerry will go for it since he's all about preserving the family unit. The psychiatrist offers to talk to Jerry for her, and she agrees. He says he'll give Jerry a call. Back at the house, Jerry comes outside to check the mail. As he's sorting through it, he finds a manila folder from the Seattle Examiner addressed to Stephanie. He's obviously, like you can tell, he's a little stunned by it and starting to get that silent rage kind of inside him. He opens it up and finds a picture of himself as Henry with the shaggy hair, glasses, the beard and mustache. Now he knows, he suspects that Stephanie suspects something, I'm sure at this point. I mean, he doesn't really say, but he's got to. Why else would she request this, you know?
It's one of those situations of, I know that you know that I know that you know.
Right.
That you know that I know that something is not right here.
Exactly. That's exactly what it's like. You can see he's concerned. And then as he's back to the street and muttering to himself, because he does that a lot, Stephanie rides up on her bike, asks if there's any mail for her. Jerry says yes, but hesitates before giving it to her. Then he jokingly says something along the lines of, I don't think this is appropriate for you. And she's looking at him. She had a look of worry on her face, but he then hands her a cosmetology.
Cosmetology?
I was a cosmopolitan, but cosmopolitan. He hands her a Cosmopolitan magazine instead, laughing it off like it was just a joke, and then heads back inside. Next, we see Jerry down in the basement again, clearly furious. He's really blowing off some steam this time.
He's really banging on that thing.
Yeah, he's hitting things, picking up random tools, muttering to himself about Stephanie being a good girl. He looks at he has a Polaroid picture that was taken at the party. He's got that tacked up on his tool bench thing, and he's looking at it and yelling and screaming at it and beating it, because he's got once he picks up like a kind of a knife. I don't know what, it's not really a knife. It had a lot of serrated edges on it, and he's doing like a jab, and then he finds a hammer and he's hammering stuff, and he's just losing his shit, going crazy. I don't know how no one hears him. It must be soundproofed or something.
Well, and it could also be a situation where, like, when Dad's downstairs, leave him alone, no matter what you hear.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That was a thing back in the day.
It was.
So he's losing his mind, going crazy. All of a sudden, Susan calls down to him, letting him know that dinner will be ready in 15 minutes. He instantly snaps out of it, just completely out of that rage, and right back into regular Jerry.
It was all back to family Jerry.
Right. So he looks at his hands kind of quizzically. He drops the hammer. He's looking at his hands in a weird way, like almost like you wonder if although he does seem cognitive of it, you wonder if he has a split personality disorder of some sort, because he will switch in and out fast. But at the same time, I feel like even in his regular Jerry state, he's fully aware of how much it bothers him to not have family.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? He snaps out of his rage. He looks at his hands. He's looking confused about it and how he got so worked up. Then he's like, oh, I got to find this picture. I got to find the picture that he ripped off the tool bench earlier. He finds it. He gently, like, he's caressing the mom and the daughter in the picture. And he's like, oh yeah, there's my family. Sweet girl, sweet girl. He even apologizes to the photo as if the photo was upset.
Right.
Okay. He's a little wacky. The phone rings. Susan answers. It's Dr. Bondurant. He asks to speak with Jerry. She calls down to Jerry, who immediately gets defensive, asking, what does he want? You can tell Jerry's still on edge. And now I'm sure it's kind of going through his mind. Why does this man calling me and want to see me? She says that Dr. Bondurant wants him to come to the office so he can talk to him. Now he knows, he's got to know something's up. If Stephanie's asking for a picture from the newspaper and now her therapist wants to talk to him, he's got to know something's going on. So he tells his wife to tell him he's not there. She tries to reason with him, suggesting just to talk to the doctor, but he insists, tell him I'm not here. And if he calls back, tell him I'm still not here. So she tells him, he's unavailable right now. I'll have him call you back later. Then the scene briefly goes to Dr. Bondurant hanging up the phone and looking a little puzzled, because of course he could hear all of it. I'm sure, at least on her end.
Because it wasn't quiet.
Right. And it's an old phone. It wasn't like it was on mute or anything. So he, at least, if nothing else, heard what she was saying. Then there's this quick little cut scene where Jerry is walking outside a photography store. There's all these different pictures of different families and stuff in frames that you can see through the window. Nothing significant happens here, but what he's doing does come up later. Then we go back to Ogilvy, the brother of the deceased wife. He's asleep in his car outside a police station when a man comes up and knocks on the window to wake him up. It's the detective, and it's his parking spot. And he's like, you're in my parking spot. And Ogilvy says, well, I feel like it's the only way that I'm going to get to talk to you. So they start talking about Henry Morrison, and the detective tells him that's not even his real name. His entire background was fabricated. His fingerprints don't match anything in the system. The detective says they spoke to a psychologist who believes that this man has probably done this before. The theory is that he lives with the family for a while, and then when something goes wrong, he wipes them out and moves on to the next one. Ogilvy asks what the policemen plan to do about it. But the detective admits there's nothing they can do right now. They have no leads, no real information. All they can do is wait for it to happen again. Ogilvy thinks that's crazy, which it is, but sometimes that's true. If they don't have anything, they just have to wait for him to do it again, and hopefully they fuck up. And he asks the detective, well, what would you do if you were in my position? The detective bluntly says, I'd get a gun and blow him away. Then the next scene shows Ogilvy at the shooting range. Apparently, he's trying to take a shit through his pants while shooting the gun because I don't know why he was standing this way, because he's holding the gun with both of his hands pointed out towards what he's shooting at, but he is in this pretty deep squatting position. Like, I don't know why he was standing that way. I don't know who taught him that. Maybe he did have to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, that was not safe shooting.
No,
by any stretch of the imagination.
It was really weird looking. It was so obvious too. I mean, that was the first thing I noticed was because you could see his legs under where he was standing, and that was the first thing I saw. I was like, what the fuck's he standing like that for? Okay. But he's determined to be prepared, I guess. Jerry goes to Stephanie's high school and manages to convince the principal to let her come back. Later, Stephanie is back at her psychiatrist's office, and she's sarcastically saying, great, now I guess I'll have to say that Jerry Blake is the most wonderful father in the world because he got me back into my school. And she tells his therapist that she thinks that the only reason why he did that was so he could avoid seeing her psychiatrist, and that it's really strange that Jerry refuses to come to see him. But then she admits to her therapist that Jerry scares her, like really, really scares her. Yeah. And he seemed very concerned by this. So sometime after Stephanie leaves her appointment, Jerry gets a call at work from a man named Mr. Martin who wants to view a house. When we see the caller, it's actually Dr. Bondurant, Stephanie's therapist. He's posing as a potential buyer just to meet Jerry and see what he's really like.
Which is a little unethical, but hey, whatever.
Yeah, probably. And really going out of his way. I mean, I don't know. I mean, imagine doing that for every single person you do therapy for.
Right.
That seems a little far-fetched. But yes. Yeah, probably very, very unethical. So he takes down the address and he writes on this thing on his desk the address and then the time and the name of the person he's meeting. We then get a quick scene of Stephanie walking home from school with a male friend. Did you get that guy's name?
No.
I didn't get it either. They're talking about her being back at school and what classes she's in now. She says she's in a typing class instead of art, and he jokingly asks her to make him a painted shirt because when the whole fight earlier, she put a handprint on her teacher's back. So he was making a joke about how she can make him a painted shirt. They get into a light, playful tussle. It's just a small moment, but it's mainly just there to show some romantic chemistry between them because that comes up later. But nothing actually happens at this point. When Stephanie gets home, she grabs the mail and finds something from the Seattle Examiner.
Wow.
Crazy. Thinking it's the photo she requested, she opens it, but it turns out not to be Jerry. It's somebody else. She's clearly disappointed. We obviously know that that is not the right guy, that Jerry went to that photo shop place, the photo store, got a picture of some other guy and sent it through the mail again to her so she would think that this is the guy that killed his family and not him. Next, we see Dr. Bondurant arriving at the house where he plans to meet Jerry. He's posing as a buyer to get a sense of who Jerry really is. Jerry gives him a tour, pointing out how spacious the house is, and mentions that it's perfect for a family because this guy is
obsessed
really into family.
Obsessed with families.
Obsessed. He asked Dr. Bondurant, who's pretending to be Ray Martin, by the way, whether he's a family man. Bondurant says he's a confirmed bachelor, which Jerry finds upsetting to some degree because he's such a big abstinent. He's such a big advocate for family life. So Jerry lets him know, I'm a family man. I love family. Bondurant, trying to get a reaction out of him, makes a very dismissive comment about how the whole home sweet home thing doesn't work for everyone and that it's not really his bag and all that crap. He makes this, he calls it all that crap. And Jerry, and he's saying it deliberately just to see the reaction he's going to get from Jerry. And Jerry looks a little off about it. He doesn't get upset or anything, but you can tell by the look on his face, he doesn't like it.
He's a little perturbed.
A little bit. Jerry looks a little upset about it, asks what he means. Bondurant just replies that not everyone is into it, the traditional family setup. But you can tell Jerry really is, and thinks every single person on this planet should also be. As they continue the house tour, Jerry asks Bondurant what he does for a living. Bondurant, still posing as Ray Martin, says he works in stress management, helping employers and employees reduce friction. They move into another room, and Jerry once again points out how much space there is, emphasizing that this house really should have a family in it. Bondurant kind of challenges him, asking him, are you not going to sell me this house if I don't have a family? Jerry quickly backtracks, saying, oh, no, I'm not saying that. Then Bondurant remarks that Jerry seems like a real cheerleader for traditional values. And Jerry replies, well, traditions are important. Bondurant then suggests that Jerry must have had a strict upbringing, and Jerry admits you could say that. But then Jerry cuts to the point pretty abruptly. He doesn't really hold back. He's like, are you interested in buying the house, or are you interested in me? This is where Bondurant slips up. He says, sorry, force of habit. He should have just stopped right there, because that would have made perfect sense. That would have been fine. But he accidentally says, my wife gets on me about that all the time. Which, of course, earlier he said he was a confirmed bachelor. Jerry immediately catches it and points out the contradiction, saying, I thought you said you were a confirmed bachelor. Bondurant tries to cover up by saying he's recently divorced and sometimes forgets he's not married anymore, which, of course, doesn't make any sense. Jerry just calmly responds, it must be the stress, which I thought was kind of funny, because that's what he does in the stress manager thing. As he says this, he picks up a very large piece of lumber, and suddenly, without warning, he just turns around and starts beating Bondurant with him and eventually knocking him to the ground. Jerry, who is now completely unhinged, demands to know, who are you? How did you find out about me? Bondurant, still trying to stick to his story, insists he's just looking to buy a house. Jerry doesn't buy it and declares, I don't think this is the right house for you. This house is meant for a family. Home, sweet home, and all that crap. Then he lifts the piece of lumber and hits Bondurant in the head repeatedly, killing the fuck out of him. Yes. So afterward, Jerry goes through Bondurant's pockets and finds his wallet, realizing that he is Stephanie's therapist. He then wraps the body in some paper that was laid out for painting the room and mutters to himself, because he mutters to himself all the time when he gets in these kind of little rage things. And then he's going to take Bondurant for a little ride. So Ogilvy, the brother, goes back to the house and the sister's house. And he's looking around, and of course, it's just decrepit and a mess. He goes down into the basement, and the basement is set up. This house is actually very similar to the other house. On the outside, they both look almost the same, and even parts of the inside. But when he's down in the basement, again, it's set up like a workshop. This is obviously something that Jerry/Henry loves, is working on shit with tools. And he's looking around, and he sees he has a picture in that basement of his family that he annihilated, and he looks at that. But there's a magazine on the tool bench, and for some reason he picks it up. I don't know if I would thought to pick it up, and it's a travel magazine. He's flipping through it, and he notices there's a few pages that have been torn out. And now he's like, whoa, there's something to these torn out pages. I need to find out what is on these pages. So he hightails it out of the house, runs and heads out to the local library where he's at. This library, it's been a year. That magazine had to have been there for a year, because at the house, because that's the last time Jerry was there, because his family died a year prior. This library he goes to just happens to have this same magazine out still a year later for people to take and look at.
If you've gone to doctor's offices, there are times when they might have magazines from quite a while ago.
Well, doctor's offices, yes, absolutely. But a library, the library doesn't do that. A library will take, because I worked in a library once, a little in high school. That was part of my thing. I helped out the library.
Nerd.
True. So when we had older periodicals, when the newer ones would come in, we take the older ones and put them in magazine holders, like they're, I don't know what else you call them. And then we'd have to take them back to a storage area and put them away. So they keep them in case anybody needs something from a, whatever date, blah, blah, blah. But the newer ones are the ones that are out. They would not have a year-old magazine in the library. But they did at this one. I guess they didn't want to take the time to have them go in the storage bank and grab a magazine. So he starts flipping through. He finds the magazine. He's flipping through it. he finds the section that was ripped out, and it's all America's best little towns, and they're family oriented and things of that nature. Anything that Jerry/Henry would be looking for in a town for a family man. So he's going through it, and he gets to one, and it's in Oak Ridge, Washington, which is the closest to where they are in Seattle. He's like, that's it. That's got to be where he went. So then you see there's little scenes back and forth. You see little bits of Stephanie. She's talking to her friend Karen, who's at the house, about the picture that she got from the Seattle Examiner. Her friend Karen said, well, you're acting like you're upset that he's not Jack the Ripper. And Stephanie says, I was wrong. I was completely wrong. And I felt like she almost felt bad that she was wrong in accusing Jerry, more so than being upset that he wasn't Jack the Ripper. And then it goes back to Jerry, and Jerry is now setting up this whole scene for it to look like the doctor had an accident. He puts the doctor in his car. He puts a cloth in the gas tank, lights it up, then sends the car barreling down an embankment. And then, of course, at some point, the flame catches up to the gas tank and the car explodes. So then he just nonchalantly, calmly walking down the street late at night, whistling his Camptown Races song and heading home, or back to his car, at least. I guess he's probably going back to the other house to get his car. But it was like nothing happened. It was no big deal for him. So the next scene, we see Stephanie in the garage, and she's working on her bicycle. Jerry opens the garage door, comes in, and as gently as possible breaks it to her that Dr. Bondurant died. She's super upset, crying, wants to know what happened. He says the police aren't sure. It looks like he just had some sort of accident. She puts her head on his chest. They have a moment. She's crying, and she says, he was my friend. He's hugging her. He says, I know he was. He was a special man, and in his own special way, he brought us together, and nothing is going to tear us apart. And then, of course, he smirks.
That's creepy.
Yeah, he's a little creepy. Then we have a scene where we go back to the house. Jerry's putting up his now finished birdhouse, which looks just like their house and the other house, because those houses look the same. Susan and Stephanie come outside. Stephanie asks if she can help. And of course, everybody's just elated that they're all getting along now. They're like one big happy family. He's super thrilled about it. Stephanie's holding the birdhouse pole while Jerry fills in the hole. She says to him that she knows she's been in a lot of trouble and she's sorry. He says that they both owe each other apologies. So just call it even and bury the hatchet. Ha ha ha. I feel like that was a little foreshadowing too. The mom, they have a little back and forth there, and the mom ends up bringing up boyfriends, and Jerry is like, boyfriends? He's not into that at all. He says she's still young. She needs to just take it slow and easy. Mom's like, yeah, though, boys, girls, dating. They kind of laugh. Mention that he's old-fashioned. He says, yes, guilty as charged. So then the next scene is Thanksgiving, and Jerry, the mom, and Stephanie are sitting at the table. There's a big turkey there. They have a little bit of conversation. He says something sappy about how until today he didn't even understand what Thanksgiving was about. Okay. Whatever,
I mean,
man.
he did have a whole other family.
Right. Yeah. You never celebrated Thanksgiving with them. You didn't say this same exact line with them. But the most important thing that I found about this scene was how the mom was dressed. She was dressed like someone named Prudence. Why? Even the daughter, though. The daughter also had a very high collared shirt on, but it was more colorful and more of the time. But the mom, her high collared off-white shirt with the ruffles, some lace, huge brooch in the middle of the collar. Her hair was done up in this top bun, but it was also loose. Like, why in the world? Is just because it's Thanksgiving? Are you trying to be a pilgrim? Like, what are you doing? Because nobody else was really dressed in authentic Thanksgiving wear from back in the day. But yeah, that was the biggest takeaway for me from that scene, was how she was dressed. Why are you dressed like this? Ogilvy has made it to town because he's now rushing to Oak Ridge, Washington. I happen to notice here that he has facial hair. I don't know if he had facial hair before, but I feel like he has a lot of facial hair here, which I know is indicative of the passage of time.
But this isn't an armpit.
No, but I'm assuming hair works the same on all parts of the body. But yeah, for some reason, I did not notice him having facial hair earlier on in the movie. And then when I saw it here, I was like, wow, that guy who did that, making monsters, must have gotten that trick from this
Right,
movie.
from this.
Right.
And wait a minute, got to go back 1 second for the Thanksgiving thing. So,
okay.
All of this took place like about a year ago, like his other family.
Right.
Maybe that's why he killed them, is because they didn't teach him the true meaning of Thanksgiving.
You're right. They weren't thankful enough.
No, not at all.
That's a good point. I hadn't thought of that. You unthankful bastards. So time has passed, quite a great deal of time. So he heads to some office in the town. I missed what the office was. It must be like a records office or something. He asked to see all the marriage licenses for people who got married within the last year. The guy's dismissing it. I don't have time for all that shit. He's like, you don't understand. This guy's a killer. He killed an entire family. He's going to do it again if we don't catch him. But the guy he was talking to didn't have time for it, didn't care about it, because nobody cares about dead families.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
Ain't nobody. So Ogilvy then the guy leaves and he calls him an asshole. And there's a lady behind the counter, so a receptionist or whatever. And she says, you haven't been here long enough. And he said, what do you mean? She's like, to call him an asshole. So then he decides, let me turn on the charm with this receptionist lady. And his flirtiness works. He's flirting with her. She ends up giving him the list of recently married people from the past year. Then there's a scene where Stephanie is at she's at some local hangout for kids. It looked like maybe it was a restaurant, but a bunch of teenagers were there. She's sitting there at a booth. She gets up, she puts her jacket on, goes outside, and she's getting ready to walk home. The friend of hers from the boy from earlier, he shows up on a moped. They joke around a little bit and he wants to give her a ride home. And she's like, only if I drive. So she drives, they get to her house. He walks her up to the door. They're talking but they're kind of getting close and there's a little romantic tension going on. They're really close. Yeah. And then they kiss and then they kiss again. Ooh, yeah. But the first kiss was, quicker than the second kiss. The second kiss, they were like in it. Then the next thing you know, the door swings open. You have that sound music they play to show like bad guys arrived.
Right.
Jerry swings the door open, yells at the kid, "Hey, you!" Something like "Get off her!" Like, "Hey, you! Get away from her!
Stop!
She's a 16-year-old girl." And he's like, the boy's like, "I'm 16 too."
Right.
What's your point? Okay. And then the mom comes out. I can still call her the mom. Susan comes out. She's like, "What's going on? What's going on?" And he said, "This man here was practically raping our daughter."
Yeah.
Okay.
A little extreme.
A little bit. Teeny bit over the top with that. So the mom says, what is he talking about? What happened? And she's like, nothing. And she's telling the boy, go, just go, 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 go. The mom's like, what happened? What happened? What's going on? I don't understand. And he says he was out here kissing our daughter or something. And she said, he kissed me because I wanted him to kiss me. The mom's like, okay. But Stephanie gets all upset and then she storms off. Oh, well, no. First, hold on. She says to the mom, she says something about Jerry that the mom doesn't like. And she says, don't you dare talk that way about your father. And Stephanie says, but he's not my father. He's my stepfather. And I don't understand how you can even let him touch you. And then the mom gets pissed and slaps her in the face. But then she replies with this really light, flittery voice. Like she goes, oh, like it was just a weird voice.
So weird.
Did not fit she should have been like screaming at her.
Yeah, like, what the hell are you talking about? Oh my God.
Right. So she smacks her in the face and then she says something like, he's your father. Don't talk about him that way. But it's like light and airy and
right.
Like that. So then Stephanie storms off. And then Susan turns around and says, what are you thinking? Why are you doing that? And she says, you have just now completely ruined all the work that we have done with her. Because, of course, at this point, right before this is when they had the moment where she found out about therapist. He held her, and then they put the birdhouse up. So it's one big happy family. And now he's completely ruined it by screaming at this boy because he was kissing her. He was raping her with his mouth, I guess, or whatever.
Right.
And so now he's pissed because this changes everything for him, because now she's blaming him, and it's making her, in his mind, I'm sure it just completely destroyed his entire family unit. He doesn't want to have anything to do with her anymore. She's ruined for him for life, I'm sure. So he's like, oh, well, okay then, basically. And he turns and walks away, and he walks down to the end of the sidewalk. In the next scene, Stephanie's mom is dropping her off at the physicist's office.
This is the office.
I don't know why she'd go to the physicist's office. I thought maybe she was into quantum theory. I don't know. So Stephanie's mom is dropping her off at the psychiatrist's office to see a new therapist. It's still the same building as her other psychiatrist was in, just a different psychiatrist, of course, because the other one's gone. Dead.
Well, I mean, he would be deader than the new psychiatrist. I mean, technically.
He's so much deader than her. Stephanie goes inside, pops her head in the office. It's some old lady. She decides, I'm in the wrong office, changes her mind about the appointment. Instead, she heads over to her old therapist, Dr. Bondurant's office, who I guess it's only been a day or two, possibly, because no one's cleared any shit out of this guy's office. It's all exactly the same.
Well, it doesn't seem like anybody clears anything out of this place. Out of this environment, because a house from a year ago still has like blood stains and like all the furniture and shit.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah.
The doctor's office still has like all of his stuff in it.
Right. Nothing in there that you don't want to keep people away from. That's important stuff that you might want to put away somewhere.
Right.
So once she's inside, she notices, while she's sitting at his desk, she notices where he wrote down that he was meeting a J. Blake at 4:30 at 1708 Pine Road. Stephanie. I need to take a nap, dude.
Stephanie went to the office.
Stephanie. Oh my God.
Stephanie.
I'm combining Stephanie with instantly, which is my next word, and not putting a space in there of any sort.
Just say snuffleupagus.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You're about to.
Right. Stephanie. I gotta stop looking at the next word. It's fucking me up. Stephanie instantly knows that Jay Blake is short for Jerry Blake, who is her stepdad.
Oh no.
Are we saying that because I got through that fucking sentence? Good God.
It's both the twist that we knew and you getting through that sentence. It's both amazing.
That was unexpected. My goodness. Okay. We then see Ogilvy again, going door to door to all the people on his list, trying to find Henry, who we know is Jerry, of course. He's going up houses and knocking on doors. Guy answers. He knows instantly that that's not Jerry. Lady answers. He waits to see if he can see the husband. Next, we see Jerry back on a ferry, crossing the harbor. He has a clothing bag and a briefcase with him. Once he's inside, he goes into the bathroom. He changes his entire look again. Even though he's going back and forth between places, he's essentially creating a whole new persona while setting up his new life and then changing back into Jerry on his way back home. He takes out his contacts. He puts on some glasses. He adds a fake mustache. Then, surprisingly, I was surprised, he takes off his toupee. I didn't even realize he had a toupee, because in the first transformation, he had that long shaggy hair and he trimmed that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't realize he had a toupee. So he takes
off.
A
lot can happen in a year.
True. That's true. Except for finding mass murderers or cleaning out offices.
Right.
Those things take a long time. So he takes off his toupee, revealing that he's bald on top. He carefully puts all his disguise items into his briefcase. This whole process seems to, obviously, this is his routine whenever he's setting up his new identity. Then we go to Stephanie, who is at the house where Dr. Bondurant had planned to meet Jerry. There's nothing significant about this scene at all. She just looks around, doesn't really find anything. She the way she got in was through an open window. As she's going around and she gets to the front door, realtor is coming in with some potential buyers, and it startles her. But that's really it. There's nothing that comes out of that scene of any importance.
And she just runs away.
Yeah. Jerry is now in I had it written down, but not here. But he's in town. Jerry's in town, in another town in Washington, where he was going to go live. It had a thing showing the name of the town, but I forgot to write it down. He's pretending to be somebody new, obviously. He walks into an insurance agency where he's apparently applied for a job. I'm not really sure if he manages to get all the licenses required for these jobs or if he just fakes them. I'm going to guess he fakes them.
I'm going to make that same guess.
Yeah, because you have to have an insurance license, you have to have a real estate license. I don't know what else he would do but those things, but you need licenses for those. So I'm going to assume, yes, he fakes those. So back at the house, because, some time goes, they don't show you every second that Jerry's in that town and then comes back on the ferry. So next we're back at home. Everybody's sitting there eating dinner. Jerry, Susan, and Stephanie. You can tell it's very tense. The mom seems bothered. Jerry seems a little on edge. The music is emphasizing the uncomfortable vibe. After dinner, Susan's in the kitchen cleaning up, and Jerry heads for the door. She stops him, saying, "Jerry, we need to talk." He's acting like nothing's going on. He says, "About what?" She insists, "We need to take care of this." He's just like, "Oh, I'm taking care of it." And she says, "By yourself?" He's like, "Yep." And he walks out. As Jerry walks down the street, he notices the family that he had sold the house to that had the little girl that he was pushing on the swing. They bought that house. The dad pulls into the driveway, obviously getting home from work. Mom and daughter run out to greet him. They're all happy. They're sharing hugs and they're excited to see each other. Jerry's standing there watching, clearly envious because that's the kind of picture-perfect family he's looking for. As the family goes inside, the little girl sees him, turns around, waves. She obviously remembers him from the sale of the house. Then we see Ogilvy arriving at Jerry's house. He knocks on the door. Susan answers. He asks for Gerald Blake, but she tells him he's not home. She asks if he's looking to buy a house from Jerry, and Ogilvy says, "Oh, he sells houses." She then asks if he wants her to tell Jerry he stopped by. Ogilvy says, no. I'm not even sure this is the right Gerald Blake. I would rather surprise him, though, if it is. Back in his new town, Jerry is settling into his new persona. He meets his next-door neighbor, who is a lady out raking leaves, and he immediately starts talking to her, kind of flirty, but not overly flirty. He's just getting the must-have information, which is, are you married and do you have children? She is not married. She has kids. He gets a big old smile on his face. He's very happy to know this because she's now living right next to him. Meanwhile, back at Jerry's original house, Stephanie's mom, Susan, I wrote Stephanie's mom because I didn't know what her name was. Susan is on the phone trying to call Jerry at his supposed workplace, the real estate agency. She asks for him, but the receptionist tells her that Jerry Blake no longer works there and actually left several days ago. The mom is stunned because Jerry has been leaving for work every day like nothing's changed. She's also probably a little pissed. Next, we see Ogilvy again. He's visiting another house from his list, showing the residents the picture of Henry, a.k.a. Jerry. They look at it and say it could be the guy who sold them their house, though he didn't have a beard when they met him. Ogilvy confirms that Jerry must be the man he's looking for. When Jerry finally gets home, his wife is waiting for him in the kitchen, and she's clearly fed up. She confronts him, asks him where he's been all day. Jerry claims she's like, "Oh, I was just showing the house to the Mortons from California." She tells him that's a lie because she called the office and they said he doesn't work there anymore. Jerry says, "What? What do you mean?" He's all shocked. And she said, the receptionist said you haven't worked there for a few days. You left a few days ago. And then he gets pissed at the secretary, the receptionist, and says, "Oh, that stupid woman. She's new, yada, yada, whatever." And he's bitching about her. And he's like, "I'm going to call there." So he gets on the phone like he's going to call. Susan says, no, don't worry about it. You don't have to worry about it. And she probably just got their name wrong. Jerry, who is, pretending he's on the phone because, he didn't call shit. He says, "How hard can it be?" He says, "Hodgkins, how hard can it be?" So now Susan stops and says, "What did you say?" And he looks a little bewildered and confused himself. Like he doesn't know what he said.
The lie is unraveling.
Yeah. He says, "Wait a minute. who am I here? Then Susan's like, what the fuck? And then she says, Jerry. And he snaps back to reality saying, oh, Jerry Blake. He's still holding the phone, which is going dee 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 dee, which is a busy signal for anybody that doesn't know what those sound like back in the day.
Back in the day, yep.
So he's still holding the phone, and he turns around and smacks her across the face with the phone. Then, in a very calm voice, he looks at her and says, are you all right, sweetheart? And he does this really well.
He does.
This whole back and forth thing, he does really, really well. Her face is bloody and bruised. She's clearly terrified and shocked, does not understand what the hell's going on. She manages to get up and runs towards the basement stairs. They struggle at the top of the stairs. She's trying to pull the door closed. He's trying to open it. They're struggling. He eventually gets the door open enough. He grabs a hold of her shirt, and she's just kind of dangling at the top of the stairs. And then he punches her, and she goes flying down the stairs, head over feet, off the side, through the railing, onto the floor of the basement. She's lying on the basement floor. We see Ogilvy, and he's racing his car. He's in his car, flying, trying to get to the house. Back at the house, Jerry's rummaging through the knife drawer, trying to decide which one would be best for chopping up his family. There's a butcher knife. There's regular carving knives. He finally settles on a carving knife, basically, and is about to head downstairs when the dog starts whimpering. And for a moment, I was like, no.
Yeah, you leave the dog alone.
Don't kill the dog. For some reason, I'm not overly bothered by the killing of the people, but the dog, I'm like, no, don't do it.
You leave the dog alone.
So he fortunately does not kill the dog. He gets down on the floor, calls the dog over. The dog finally comes to him, and he's just kind of petting the dog. He's petting the dog and rubbing the dog and loving the dog, and he's all happy about the dog. He's basically just now distracted by the dog, but he's not going to kill the dog. Just then, Stephanie comes home and calls out for her mom. The dog hears her, immediately runs to her. She pets it a little bit, but then she heads upstairs. Jerry's still in the kitchen, and when he hears that she's there, he stands up and ominously says, you're a very bad girl. Meanwhile, Ogilvy is stuck at a crosswalk where they're letting kids and a nun cross the street as he's trying to get to the house. Then we cut to Stephanie, who's getting in the shower. And again, I'm sure this girl is an adult in real life, but again, another weird 80s movie moment where they show her completely naked and she's portraying a 16-year-old girl.
Yes, portraying a 16. She was 22 in the movie, like in real life.
Right.
But it's simulated and alluding to the fact that she's 16.
Right.
Which still makes it kind of creepy.
Right. I mean...
And by kind of, I mean a lot.
Right. Regardless of her age in real life, she is definitely being portrayed as a 16-year-old high school girl. And it's just weird, which, of course, at the time, didn't dawn on me. Didn't think twice about it.
Nope, not at all.
But now I'm thinking, I mean, they show everything. I was like, well, tits and ass. They don't show everything. But it's like, what? And she's in the shower, another shower scene with a 16-year-old girl. It's like, what? It's so weird. I don't know. I don't know why it's necessary. Whatever. So Jerry is making his way up the stairs, clearly planning some psycho type shit in this scene. And just as he's getting about halfway up the steps, the doorbell rings. He stops. It kind of almost looks like he's contemplating, do I answer the door or do I go ahead and go kill her in the bathtub, in the shower? Right. You don't really see the decision he makes.
It's a hard decision.
Right. You see Ogilvy outside the door, ring the doorbell some more. Then he tries the door. It opens. He's like, oh, I'm just going to go ahead and go in because why not go into a psycho killer's house unexpectedly?
Right.
Makes sense. Everybody should do it at least once. Ogilvy lets himself in. He quietly steps inside. He has his hand in his pocket, obviously holding the gun that he has now as he's moving deeper into the front entrance of the house. As he gets closer to the stairway, the door behind him closes, and there's Jerry standing there waiting for him. They turn around, see each other, recognize each other immediately. Jerry's like, oh, Jim Ogilvy, which this is when I first realized Jim's name, by the way, that his name was Jim. Jerry has some blood on his face, and Ogilvy notices it, points it out, says, that's blood. Jerry lifts his hand up, touches his face, but in that hand, not only is he holding the big knife, but his hand's also bloody. So now Ogilvy starts to panic, and he starts fumbling in his pocket to get his gun. I guess he forgot to get in his sumo squat because that would have helped him.
It would have helped him a lot more than what was going on.
To get that gun out. It would have spread the pocket open. He could have got his hand in. And so he's fumbling around, can't get hold of the gun. Before you know it, Jerry's up there, up against him, and just shoving the knife into his gut, and just really, really 2 or 3 times some good rams with this knife into his gut. We see him pull back. There's Jim standing there, obviously not going to make it. And he finally pulls the gun out, but it's a little too late. The gun drops to the floor. Ogilvy drops to the floor. He's dying, probably dead, I'm going to assume, pretty quickly. Okay, so Stephanie has gotten out of the shower. She has gone to her room, put some clothes on, but as she's walking down the hall back towards the bathroom, she's towel drying her hair, so her head's kind of upside down with her hair upside down. She's not really paying attention, of course. Jerry who went into the bathroom to see if she was there. Obviously she wasn't. Comes out. He's coming out of the bathroom. He turns to look at her. He says, "Hi, Pumpkin." So she suddenly looks up, realizes he's got a bloody knife. He's bloody. He lunges at her. She dodges him, runs back into the bathroom, and slams the door shut. Jerry starts pounding on the door with his fists and the back of the knife, hitting it so hard that the mirror on the back of the door begins to crack, with shards falling off. Stephanie grabs a shard of glass that she's wrapped in a hand towel to protect her hand. And the shard of glass was a perfect shard of glass for stabbing someone.
Yes.
It was nice that worked out for her in that way. Okay. So then she's standing there. Jerry breaks through the door. He charges at her. She stabs him. It looks like, I thought she stabbed him in the chest, because when she ran up to him, that's where she was. But it ended up that she just stabbed him in his upper arm instead. She manages to slip past him and headed towards the stairs, but she saw Ogilvy's body at the bottom of the stairs. She panicked, and instead of just going ahead and, who cares, it's a dead body, he's not going to do anything to you, running out the front door, which would have made more sense, she stays upstairs and runs down the hall. Typical horror movie logic.
Yes.
Jerry recovers, makes his way out of the bathroom. Stephanie, of course, is freaking out. There's a big window at the end of the hall. She can't get it open. She then goes over and opens these it's a closet that has like a linen closet, has 2 doors. She opens them up. It's got shelves in it with covered, linens and towels. But if you climb up those shelves, it leads to an attic opening. Now she gets in this attic, and this attic is something else. It's crammed with random junk, like a giant tricycle, furniture, bird cages, a baby crib. I have no idea how they managed to get all that shit up in there through that little hole.
That makes me wonder what my attic looks like, because I have an attic that's kind of like that. It's hidden, like the doorways or the hatch or whatever above like a couple shelves in my bathroom upstairs. And the hole is tiny. Like, there's no way I'm getting my fat ass in there. Maybe my daughter could poke her head up there at some point.
Right.
Maybe like there's some riches up there or dead bodies or some shit.
But when you're in the attic, though, that hole is big. And it might be a big opening. But when you're in the closet, those shelves come out like normal shelves. Like, there's not a lot of space. I don't know how they got all that shit up in there.
Yeah, no idea.
There was a whole lot of shit up there.
Maybe they built the house around it.
Oh,
there's a bird cage? Yeah, we'll just build it. We'll just build an attic around it. They're not going to use it anyway.
At first I thought maybe there was some side exit. Like you could, because some houses like that have a big attic in that way, there'll be a door with the stairs. No, there wasn't. But I'm going to guess, though, that they built the house around all these. So she's up here in this attic, crammed with all this crap. He makes his way up the shelves, too, which, honestly, I was surprised he could fit, because it really is a small space between the doors and the opening way and the shelves. It's a really small space.
Oh, he's slippery with blood.
Oh, that's right.
So he's all lubed up already.
Yeah, he's all lubed up. He just slipped right up that thing. So he follows her up. There's a sled up there. She throws that at him. He ducks. It's fine. Nothing happens with that. So as Jerry's moving through the attic, he calls out to Stephanie, claiming it's just a game. They're just playing around. He's just joking with her. This is how families play.
Well, that's how we played,
Although, yes, I did. My sister did chase me with a couple of knives around the house. And I ended up getting in trouble for it. crazy.
Oh, hey.
So that's how it works.
You shouldn't have made her pick up the knife.
Right. Well, she's the younger one. She's the baby. So he's just saying all this stuff, trying to get her to come out. He eventually spots where he thinks she is. He lunges at her. She jumps out, starts throwing some more stuff at him, like a lamp or something. Now, most of the floor of the attic is finished. It's got flooring on it, but there is a part over on one side of the attic where it's just the open rafters with, what the heck's that shit called? Insulation in it. So she's hopping from one rafter to another and, trying to avoid falling into the insulation part of it. And he's chasing behind her. There's a little bit of a struggle and he loses his balance and he does fall through the ceiling, crashing back into the bathroom downstairs where this whole thing started. Stephanie then takes that opportunity to climb down from the attic, make her way out of the closet, and head downstairs. As she reaches the stairs, she sees her mom, who has managed to crawl up all the way from the basement, through the kitchen, out into the hallway, foyer area, and then back up the steps.
Oh, good for her.
Yeah, to go upstairs. But she's only like part way up she's not even halfway up the stairs. She's like at the first couple of steps. But she's there. She made it. And she's calling out for Stephanie. Stephanie responds, mommy. I think she says mommy. And as she says it, Jerry suddenly appears, grabs her, and throws her back behind him. But Mom has the gun.
Oh, boy.
Good job, Mom. So she fires a shot, hitting Jerry in the shoulder. He stumbles halfway down the stairs on his stomach, like he slides down them, but somehow gets back up, starts going up them again because he's trying to get back to Stephanie. Mom fires a second shot, totally misses, hits some picture on the wall. He keeps going. She fires a third shot, hitting him in the leg, slides back down again, but this time Mom's out of bullets. So he starts crawling up the stairs. Mom notices that the knife is at the top, very top of the stairs. She's yelling for Stephanie, the knife, get the knife. So now Stephanie and Jerry are both on their way towards the knife. Who's going to get there first? So they're both going. Finally, they get there. Stephanie gets her hand on the knife, but he immediately puts his hand on hers. Of course, it's a tie.
Was it me, or did it take an exceptionally long time for both of them to get to the knife?
Yes, it did take an exceptionally long time. I could understand him taking a bit of time because he's going upstairs and he's just been shot twice. Plus, he fell through the ceiling. But her, I mean, I don't know. He just kind of threw her behind him. I don't know why she couldn't just get up and run over and grab the knife. I guess he threw her really, really hard, and I didn't notice. Because maybe I should live in this town because nobody notices or cares about shit. So.
Exactly.
And since I didn't notice or care, I must live there. I should live there. She grabs the knife. There was I don't know when she got up, but all of a sudden you saw her raise her arm up really high, up on his knees. She plunges the knife into his chest. Basically looked to me right into his heart. Like that's where it looked like it was. I don't know how he had a second to do anything or say anything, but even though she put that knife right in his heart, he manages to stand for a moment, looks at her, mutters, "I love you," and then finally collapses, tumbling all the way down the stairs to the bottom. The movie then cuts to another peaceful, serene scene, similar to the opening, with a kid on a bike delivering newspapers in a quiet neighborhood. It's clearly Stephanie and Susan's street. The camera shifts to their house. You hear a saw running. Susan walks out the back door and the camera starts to pan over to where Stephanie is, and she's cutting down the birdhouse that Jerry built, symbolically destroying the fake family image he tried to create. And that's the end. Or is it? Because he does come back in Stepfather 2.
Ooh.
And I don't remember Stepfather 2 and how that went at all. So I don't remember how they bring him back. I'm sure there's some sort of classic horror trope for that.
This is the first time I've actually seen this one, so I have no idea because I never even knew about the second one.
Oh yeah, there's 3 plus there's the remake that they did maybe in the 90s.
See, the remake I saw, but I don't remember any of it because I think I only saw it once.
Okay, I was going to ask because I haven't seen the remake. As I say, is it similar to this at all? But since you don't remember.
See, in the 90s, I used to watch movies like 2 or 3 times. Now, I might watch them twice. I mean, especially for this, I do.
Right.
But for the most part, I don't really watch them twice unless like I'm really, really, really liked it. Right. Back in the 90s, it was like, even if it sucked, I'd still watch it a second time just in case I missed something or,
right.
Because sometimes if I watch a movie and I don't like it, if I go back in a different mood, I end up really liking it.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
But so that's why I would do that. But with the Stepfather, the remake, I don't remember watching it more than the one time.
Yeah, I can picture the guy who's in it. I can't think of his name though. He was kind of big for a little while in the 90s. I loved The Stepfather back in the day, but this, much like April Fool's Day, I don't remember any of it. I was like, how in the hell did I not remember any of this? That's crazy. Because it was one of those movies that I really loved as a kid. And again, Terry O'Quinn, whenever I thought of him or saw him, that's immediately what I thought of was The Stepfather. So I was just shocked that I really didn't remember any of it at all. So, but anyway, so what are your thoughts on this movie?
Well, so when the movie opened up and when he was in the neighborhood, like his first neighborhood and the second neighborhood,
Right.
I thought it was the same street that they filmed Halloween 1978 on.
Yeah, it does have that feeling.
Right down to the bush that he was hiding behind.
Yeah, it gave me that feeling too. It kind of had that little Halloween feeling to it.
But this was filmed in British Columbia and Halloween was filmed in California. So
interesting.
Even though it was very similar, it wasn't the same.
Yeah, they were very similar.
But honestly, with this movie, I liked it more than I thought I would. Because at the beginning, it did kind of feel like that there was going to be some sort of like cheese factor to it.
Right.
And there was some a little bit. I mean, like the 80s, they did blood a lot differently. You know, it was like always more bright and everything. Yeah. So that's just the style that they used at that point. You know,
so it's always really messy. It's like it's all like they just went and threw it everywhere.
Yeah, they just took a couple 5-gallon buckets and just kind of tossed it everywhere.
Right.
But you know, I can't really blame them for it because you know they were still kind of learning how to do all that.
Right.
I did like the movie a lot more than I thought, and I thought it was kind of clever how they covered potential plot holes. You know, because then all of a sudden they explained it.
Like, you know, what? Which ones? What things did you think were potential plot holes?
Well, I'm trying to think specifically. You kind of threw me on the spot there.
I can cut this part out. Because that was actually one thing that I thought about, because a lot of times I will look for the plot hole, or they just kind of, you know, you realize it when you're watching it. And when I was done, I was, even after the second time, although the second time I was rushing, so I really wasn't thinking about it too hard, but I was like, what kind of plot holes did they have? And I was trying to think, and I felt like, and maybe it's what you're saying, like there were plot holes, but then they fixed them somehow. And I just didn't realize it.
Like they explained it, or they did something that made it make sense.
Right. Yeah.
And that's what I liked about this. So like the writing on it was pretty good. Mm-hmm. The only real complaint that I have about it is they kind of, well, no, they did give it away a little too quickly.
Oh, yeah.
You know, because right away. Yeah, like you knew who it was right away, and it didn't leave much for any kind of like suspense.
Right.
You know, or any kind of like what's what I'm looking for, tension. It was just like you already knew who it was, and nobody else did. Like it just. I don't know. I don't like it when movies like give it away like right in the beginning.
Right. In this also, in terms of the tension, this movie could have, even if you knew who it was in the beginning, they could still, because you know how Lake Eden was, and how I mentioned that it was one of those movies where I was frustrated because you know what's going on. Like there's all these bad things are happening to these people, but no one is helping out. No one or believes them or stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And which creates high tension as the viewer, because it makes me, I get super frustrated and tense and anxious because I'm like, somebody fucking believe these people, or somebody do something like this, because you see everything that's going on and people are like, oh no, whatever. They could have done that kind of thing more in this movie, which they did not, to help build tension, where maybe the girl, because she would say, you know, to her psychiatrist, I'm afraid of him, but doesn't really, she's not like going to everybody. She doesn't go to the police or go here and say, this is what's going on. And this, like, she doesn't see him doing anything too crazy, like really crazy. Like she saw him blow up and be weird, but she didn't see him doing something malicious or bad and then go to someone and say, oh my God, this is going on. And then no one believe her.
Yeah.
Which would have worked actually, because he's such a beloved person in the town. Obviously, everybody loved him. No one would have believed what she was saying. That could have built some tension, but they did not go in that direction either with the tension.
Yeah, and I think they also could have done, if they just reorganized the movie a little bit, I think that it would have been more successful. Is if they would have taken like the bloodbath in the beginning,
right. Yeah,
and didn't show it right away, and like as the movie started progressing and they started like you started to see him crack,
like
or
flashbacks.
yeah, like you turn into flashbacks, or you start doing like the reveal as he's starting
Right.
to go into more of like the psychosis of killing the family, and then that way there you have the nice guy image. You have this new family that was together like a year ago, like they started getting together.
Right.
And the daughter, then the tension between the daughter and the stepfather would have been a little bit more heightened. They wouldn't have had to have done anything differently with what they did,
right.
but it would have brought more meaning to like her uncomfortability.
Yeah.
And it would have left the audience questioning a little bit. It's like, why doesn't she like this guy? Because he's really nice. He's doing these nice things for her, and
right.
just seeing like the psychotic break going through, and then showing that. I think that would have been more effective. Other than that, I thought it was well crafted, especially for like an 80s movie with like not a large budget.
Right.
I thought they did a pretty decent job with it.
Yeah, and in terms of acting, I thought he did a great job with that character, just the way he was so crazy at times. And then so he was almost so sappy sweet that it was almost maniacal in its way of being. Like, because we know, of course, for us, we're looking at it and we know he's the bad guy. And we know that this really giddy, sappy family values guy is not really what he is. He wants to be, but he's not it the way he should be. So it's almost comes off as creepy in his niceness more so than true in his niceness. But I thought he did a really good job with that. So how many cents do you give this movie?
I give this one 7 cents.
Yeah, I was going to say 7 as well. It's not as great as I remembered it being from when I was a kid, but I still liked it. And it is a classic. It is a cult classic. People love this movie. He actually got a lot of acclaim for doing this role, even though it's a horror movie, and typically you don't get a whole lot of that. But for his portrayal of the way he did that role, 7 and 7. All right. Do you have anything else?
No, we can put a sock on it.
Let's put a big old sock on it. That's it for this episode of 2 Cents We See Scary Movies. We hope you enjoyed our deep dive into The Stepfather, a film that proves the real nightmare isn't the psycho with a knife, but the overly enthusiastic stepdad who thinks a birdhouse and a sweater vest can fix literally anything. As always, we've got another creepy flick lined up for next week. I don't even know what it is. What is it, Dan? Let me know.
Exhibit A.
All right, so Exhibit A. That's what we're going to be watching next week. And where can we watch this?
I believe it's just on Amazon for like $1.99.
Okay. All right. Well, until then, be scared, be prepared, and don't get caught in the dark.